All right, everybody. Welcome back to Capacity Conversations. This is our sixth go around, I believe. So, better every time, and guests get better and better, which is really exciting. So, this week I've got here Lindsay Watt, who is the Chief Product Officer here at Parade. And I wanted to bring on Lindsay to talk a little bit about, sure, some of the things that Parade is working on, but also really about the bigger picture of what's going on in the freight tech space. It seems to be changing all the time, right? So,
100%.
so I wanted, sorry, my bad. So I wanted to introduce you, Lindsay. I can introduce you myself, but I would love to give the audience an opportunity to learn a little bit about you. Can you do a high level on your background, your time at Parade so far, and
Yeah,
what
for
you do
sure.
here also would be helpful.
Absolutely. So, hey, as mentioned, I'm Lindsay. I'm a chief product officer here at Parade. I've been with Parade for 4+ years now. I had a full head of hair when I started, so it's a little thinner now. But I've only been here for 4. I've been in logistics for about 7 or 8 years, and I've been building product for 20+ years now. So it's been quite a long time, quite a fun ride. Before here, I spent a couple years at Convoy. So that was my first exposure to freight brokerage. That's where I met you as well. We had an interesting ride there. That's another podcast stuff for a different day, I guess. And before that, I spent some time at Amazon building a lot of really early stage technology projects. And that's kind of what got me excited about freight, was seeing just the power of logistics and then realizing how we can take some of that tech to solve our customers' problems in this space. And so, day to day, what do I do at Parade? Well, I run the product organization. That's two parts. One is it's actual product management. So we got to figure out what customers need, what problems we're going to solve, and then go build that. And we have a couple teams that do that. And then we also have a data science team, which helps us build the AI that I think we're going to spend some time talking about today. And we'll talk about some of the stuff we got cooking in the lab, but also just we can have some conversations about where things are going in general across the industry, because there's a lot of interesting, exciting stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for the intro. Good times at Convoy, ups and downs, a lot of lessons learned, right? I think, before jumping into sort of the conversation about product and freight tech in general, I was also kind of curious to hear how can you tell me a little bit about your process for learning what to build? Because I think that a lot of tech companies, they come in from outside the industry. You obviously had some background and you've been at Parade for quite some time now, so that is industry specific in and of itself, of course. But before you start talking, I start asking about your take on freight tech. How is it that you go from not knowing much to knowing a whole lot?
Oh man, I could talk for hours on this, but I'll try and keep it somewhat concise. So let me tell you what not to do. I'll start with what you shouldn't do. Right. I think just building stuff for the sake of building is really, really bad. Right. Like that is like it's very easy to convince yourself without talking to any customers that you're building something useful and ship something that nobody loves. So that's the thing you should not do. Right. The way to figure out kind of what to build, there are a bunch of signals that you need to look for. And as an aside here, the thing I'd add here is if any product manager ever tells you, like, I have found the perfect way to prioritize stuff, they are probably lying, because it is an art and a science. We'll talk about the science, but there's a bit of art as well. So we look for a lot of different things. Number one, it starts with the customers, right? What are our customers' problems, right? And so we really want to understand what's the pain that is keeping you up at night? What's preventing you from being more successful as a brokerage? Is it automation? Is it fraud? Is it price discovery, finding carriers on lanes, like building your network, hiring the right people? Like there's we don't understand deeply what those problems are. That's number one. Then number two, we kind of ask ourselves, can we go solve that? Do we have the technical skills to actually go solve that? And does solving that align with us as a business, right? If we go solve that, can we sell you something that's going to be able to let us be self-sufficient so we can keep being your partner and keep providing you with new solutions, right? And then there's a ton of data that flows off of there as well, just to understand, to say, hey, you've got this problem. What do we see in the data? Because we're building new stuff. We're also optimizing the existing stuff. And internally at Parade, we have thousands of metrics we can look at to understand what's happening for our customers and how to tweak the telemetry to make sure that we actually can build the product that solves their issues. So a couple different things we look at there. The other thing I'll say too is I also love it when customers tell us what solution they want, because we probably aren't going to build that, right? Not because we don't actually want to build their thing. Rather, that tells me that they've got something that's such a pain point for them that they've already thought through what a solution could be, right? And so those are really fun conversations when you get a chance to talk to a customer who's like, if you could just do this, it'd be amazing, because then we get to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's a bad enough problem for them that they've thought already about how to solve it, and they've already envisioned some way for you to solve it.
Yep.
Like if they already know something about you and what kind of data you get, they think, okay, here's how they could use that to do something else, and the actual solution becomes something that's informed by that. And I think that's really cool. I love having customers who are invested and bought in enough to say, this is a technology partner, and I want to build products together with them, build solutions together with them using what they've already got.
Yeah. One of the things we're pretty bullish on at Parade and every company, one of the things I brought here is we call them design partnerships. And so it's a bit jargony, the phrase design partnership, but essentially it's like, look, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, you have a problem, right? And at Parade, we think we can solve it. And we're really good at technology, but we don't move trucks. Like I have never moved a truck down the I-5 or tried to get a reefer into the Central Valley in produce season. Like that's what our customers know how to do really, really well. And so if we can build software with them to learn inside out what those problems are, we can build a really great solution, right? And so that's where it's fun to work with 2 or 3 customers on some early stage stuff that might not be public yet, but we think it's a big enough problem it's going to solve for lots of folks. And we want to get the first set of customers in there and really give them an outsized voice at the table to make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think also that you're to that other point that you said in the beginning, where you don't start building just for the sake of building. You have to validate the problem, and you also have to little by little validate that solution by building it together with a test case. And ideally you want to have a few, right? Because every brokerage, for example, is a little bit different in how they handle phone calls, how they handle emails, how they are covering loads. So there needs to be that right level of, hey, this is a product that can fit most use cases.
Yep.
Never going to be 100%, but we can make the tweaks to get it to that, 80, 85.
Totally. One of the things I like to tell the product team, and I won't talk product all day because you're talk capacity, but I can talk product all day. But one of the things I like to remind our product managers all the time is like, you are not the customer, right? Like it's so important to have the customer's voice in the room and understand that you are not actually a customer. You got to go build for the customer.
Yeah. I also think that there is this sort of perennial problem of trust between our customers and the tech vendors out there. There are promises made, and you have to fulfill those promises. You don't want to overpromise. You also don't want to be too conservative, because you want to dream together with the customer about what could be, and like we've been saying, build together something. I think that's actually a really good segue into this topic where we're seeing so many AI companies out there who we hadn't heard of 12, 18 months ago, and now they're just bursting onto the scene, seemingly covering a lot of similar ground potentially with the sort of workflows that they're automating with LLMs, which is very exciting. I think everybody sees the real potential there, see the pitfalls as well. But if you're a freight broker, what do you think is the best way to evaluate these potential AI solutions? Because it's not going to be when you need to adopt them. It's not going to an if you need to adopt them. It's more of a when and in what capacity first. Everybody will have them soon. So how would you suggest brokers evaluate their AI providers?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it is definitely a bit of the Wild West right now. I imagine kind of like 110 years ago when people were figuring out how to electrify things for the first time, right? I always kind of imagine there were like guys from Westinghouse and GE knocking on every factory's door being like, you need electricity, I can get you a motor sort of thing, or I can get you a generator. And I feel like this is we got the same sort of scenario going on today, except it's It's we got this new transformative technology, kind of general purpose technology called generative AI, right? And people are trying to figure out what to do with it. So if I was a freight broker, the couple things I'd be looking for is a bunch of different dimensions. I'd be looking to evaluate on. Number one is I would say, what is this a partner who actually understands my business, right? Are you trying to sell me generative AI because you're in the business of selling generative AI? Or are you trying to help me solve a freight brokerage problem, right? And I think this is the difference between where, you can go build something at the most extreme. You can go build something on OpenAI and just like do it yourself as a broker and you work with the horizontal technology, or you can work with someone who's very vertically integrated or more like vertical oriented, like a Parade that really understands freight brokerage. And then there's a whole bunch of folks in between, right? And so you got to decide where on that spectrum you want to work with your vendors, right? And so do they understand your business, and do you want to work with someone who deeply understands your business, or are you looking to someone who might be just like a pure technical excellence, but you'll teach them about your business? Just make sure you know where you want to play there. That's one. And then the second one is are you buying just an AI solution for a point problem, or are you trying to buy something a little bit bigger, right? And so that's where you really, as a broker, I think you need to think through: am I looking for an AI provider, or am I looking for someone who's helping me transform aspects of my business? And either of those can be right for you, right? If you just want to solve a bunch of like small little point problems, that can be fine. Or you might be like, hey, actually, there's this core workflow that involves multiple different steps that if I can automate that and AI is going to be part of that, that's going to be really valuable to me. But again, it depends on your perspective as a broker, where you stand.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I see folks out there doing the, hey, we're an LLM provider, and there are so many opportunities for workflows to automate in freight brokerage. It's very true. You've got folks who really have been a solution in search of a problem, and that is a phrase used kind of negatively a lot of the time, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. This is an extremely powerful new technology. And it's like, hey, what kind of problems can we solve with that? But I also see that main difference between, here are point solutions for point problems. It's acute pain that you're feeling right now in these certain areas, and you can solve them quickly. But the big question that you might ask is, what's next? If I'm getting this time back, what am I doing with that time? We think a little bit at Parade about this carrier sales funnel, right? If you have the top of the funnel, or those first conversations that you have with a carrier, maybe that first load that you run with them, and then there's the middle of the funnel where you're trying to figure out, where's the relationship? How do I do more freight with the carriers and figure out which ones are the ones that I want to do more business with versus ones that I'm allowing to leave the funnel because they're not a long-term fit, all the way till that bottom of the funnel where you've got repeat capacity with these carriers and even owned capacity. I think that a lot of these point solutions are really looking at that top of the funnel, those first initial communications with carriers, which is great, and we're doing that. But then where we are kind of seeing a big difference is that middle, where can we start to see trends in the data, and then give brokers access to that data and then taking action on that. And that's kind of where I would see a differentiator here. But like you said, different companies need different things, and some of them, not everybody needs that thing for the repeat capacity.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think is really interesting about, so if you think about why are we talking about AI and freight so much? Like, there are other industries out there that people aren't talking about AI as nearly as much, right? And I think one of the reasons why it's happening in freight so much is that we have a lot of manual workflows that occur through email and voice today. And they're fairly straightforward, and they've got a clear definition of success, right? Like, if I talk to a carrier, if a carrier asks me about a load, I can identify the carrier, I can find the load, and I can request a quote from them. And that's straightforward, right? It's a very clear definition of success. Other industries aren't like that. They're not necessarily like other industries might be much more ambiguous, and therefore it's hard to define what success is. Like, there's people don't talk about like AI creating dishes for you at the restaurant, because like, what's the definition of a good dish, right? It's subjective, whereas it's much more objective in freight. And so we've got, if you're if you're a brokerage trying to evaluate whether you should invest in AI, right? You can look across your brokerage and you can say, okay, there are probably 4 or 5 areas where it's highly manual, very straightforward process, clear definition of success. And that's an awesome opportunity to go automate that with AI. And then to your point, Jesse, the thing is next is like, okay, you've automated them. Is it just about automation of that particular process, or is there more you can do, right? So, okay, maybe you automate the process of generating a quote from a carrier, but should you accept that quote? Should you actually send them the rate con? If you don't use that quote, well, what can we do with that? If you don't use that quote right now, what can I do with that? Is that a clue that this carrier likes it? Maybe one quote isn't, but if I get 2 quotes from this carrier, 3 quotes on that lane, do I want to graduate them through the carrier sales funnel you're describing? That's the sort of level 2 AI, if you will, right? Level 1 is just automate the point process, save the OpEx, life is good, but then how can you do more, right? And that's where I think the conversations are going to get really interesting over the next couple of months and years.
Yeah, and I think also there's this, if you look at the history and background of Parade, it's actually been a lot more focused on that middle of the funnel. I mean, there's always been the ability to get quotes, but there's also been a lot of focus in the past on book now, which you need an established relationship with that carrier for. You need to turn the carrier on for a book now. To do a lot of the matching, there needs to be some amount of repeat capacity, whether it's being actually acted upon or not, having that historical data. So that middle of the funnel, that level 2 AI / machine learning, every jargon word that you can, think up, that was kind of the background. And then I think that what happened with Co-Driver was it started unlocking more of that top of the funnel. And so when more carriers were able to come into the top of the funnel and there was something in place for those initial carrier conversations, that enabled carriers to flow even more quickly into that middle of the funnel solution, which was already very well established. That's why, to me, it seems like there are so many of our customers that are just seeing a hockey stick in the amount of carrier reuse, but also the digital bookings and also all of their markers of success. I think it's just because so many things came together right at the right time.
Yeah, totally. And so I think to paraphrase it for the audience, right? Our customers are praying to tell us, hey, I want to reuse my existing carriers, because when I reuse my existing carriers, a bunch of good things happen. Number 1, they're not fraudulent, right? Because I'm using folks I work with. Number 2, they provide great outcomes to my shippers because they live in their facilities and they can deliver their freight really well. And then number 3, if I can give them predictable work, they'll cut me a deal on price, and I'll get better margins, right? So if we can reuse carriers at the brokerage, wonderful things happen. In order to reuse carriers, we need to know, what do they want, where are they, where they're looking to go, and kind of what prices do they like. And most brokerages, quite rightfully, are focused on transacting. You've got to move the freight or you don't have a business. And the challenge is all that info that comes with each transaction. Who is the carrier involved? What price did they offer? Who are the carriers who bid but didn't actually win? Did a carrier give you a lane preference or something like that, tell you this is the load that they like? All those things are critical to kind of driving carrier reuse. And like you said, at Parade, we built the platform that ingests all that and figures out how to piggyback off of your existing workflows to get it. And now tossing some Gen AI on the front to basically dramatically increase the amount of info or data that gets into the platform. It's a wonderful thing. It's the gateway drug to carrier reuse.
And you talk about carrier reuse, and I think we can shift focus for a few minutes onto that carrier interaction. Can you speak a little bit about the changing interactions between brokers and carriers? I think folks are a little bit jumpy, a little bit skeptical about the changing interactions. Hey, where's my personal relationship? Which I think is a very valid concern.
Yep.
But why does this matter to carriers, and how does it impact them positively? Why do carriers' lives and businesses improve with this new technology?
Yeah. So when I've talked to customers, so let's just talk about how a carrier interacts with your brokerage today, right? Because I think a lot of people imagine a scenario where a carrier is talking to a rep on the phone, and they're it's a carrier they know, and so they're asking about the lanes they ran. Are they still in good standing for those? Maybe they know like their favorite football team. They make a joke about that, and that's what they think of when they're talking about the carrier relationship, right? And that no AI is going to take that away. What I find though is that model of what people think is very different from what really is the typical carrier relationship on most days at most brokerages, right? So most of the time what's happening is a carrier is calling in. They are sitting in a phone tree, right? They then get into a conversation eventually with the load owner at some point, having like waited for there's a very quick qualification to see like, can I work with you? A price is done. Maybe it's a go, maybe it's a not, and it's over, right? And so that's what's happening for the vast majority of carriers. That's not a great carrier experience, right? Sitting in a phone queue or an email inbox, waiting for someone to maybe reply to you or take your call is not what carriers want to be doing, right? They want to quickly know, hey, can I get the load details? Am I qualified to work on this load? And are you interested in my price? And so talking with an AI helps them have those conversations faster and actually creates a better carrier experience. If we can quickly let someone know and say, hey, I'm sorry, you actually can't work with our brokerage, right? Getting that answer in 10 seconds is much better than sitting in a phone tree for 5 minutes and then waiting to hear it. Or getting their price and then recognizing like, is it way off from the market or is it close to what we consider, and be able to have that sort of conversation really fast. Those create better carrier experiences. No one's wasting their time. Everyone's able to actually focus more on actually getting to find the work and move the truck.
Yeah, and one other point, I'm completely with you there. I personally would rather talk to an AI than sit on hold and then talk to somebody and get some information that's hopefully the truth, and then get to eventually potentially book a load or whatever it is, the thing that I'm trying to do. And then we also talked, I think, a little bit before as we were prepping for our conversation. It's like, well, what if there is a match? What if there is a carrier that calls in, emails in, gets an email, whatever it is, however it is that you are communicating with that carrier, and the ability for that carrier to act on the business that they want? Because you're talking about, hey, we're not just trying to automate phone calls, automate emails. That is a solution to something very specific. What we're trying to do is find the best carrier for every load and win that capacity from that carrier by making it ridiculously easy for that carrier to go and take that load.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a nice segue into kind of this last sort of topic that I wanted to make sure that we could explore a little bit, which was about connectivity of systems. And, we've been at Parade, you and I, for about 4 years. You were here like, I don't know, 3 to 5 months before I was. And over that time, there's been a lot of energy and investment in building integrations and connecting brokers' systems to our system and our system to every single load board, every single public marketplace, and creating this web of integrations that takes time to build. It is something that you have to also look at improving over time and see if there are limitations that you need to get past. And as we're talking about evaluating AI tools or whatever it is, how should brokers be looking at integration? And is there anything that you think they might not be considering about, hey, my systems have to be connected? It's not something that they should take for granted.
Yeah, and the benefit of systems being connected is it lets you do more, right? That's why we connect them. And so when you're looking to bring AI into your brokerage, it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, which is, do you just want to take a point solution of like, hey, I want to automate my check calls and then have it send an email, right? Or is there something bigger I can do, which is, for instance, I'm going to enable the carrier. I'm going to enable the AI to generate quotes for my carriers. Then I'm going to push those quotes, actual quotes, in front of my reps and let them pick the one that's the winner. And they might be getting quotes from public markets. They might be getting quotes from talking to individual carriers. A whole team might be generating quotes from talking to carriers. It might be coming from the AI. But the point is you don't really care where they come from as long as they're qualified carriers from the sources you want, right? And that's the benefit of having connected systems is, number one, you can pull all your data into that single pane of glass. And then number two, when you're looking at the single pane of glass, you can actually transact, right? And so that's where AI becomes an enabler to make those connected systems just that much more powerful. It's something everyone needs to think about as they're trying to evaluate what they want to do with AI.
Yeah, I also think that there are two main dimensions to an integration between two systems. There is the technical dimension, which is that API connection, or there are other methods, but most of the time, preferably API method. So that is just the connection of data flowing back and forth. But the other dimension that I think folks should really also pay attention to is the partnership dimension, where if for example, your TMS and your capacity management platform aren't, maybe they're connected with one another, but something goes awry, something gets skewed, whatever that is, something industry terms, right? If something gets a little bit messy with the technical, is there a nice cushion of partnership and business partnership that can help to remedy that thing quickly? That is something that I think is extremely important, and those partnerships take time and effort to build as well.
Totally. Another
I'm curious.
comment there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just another comment there was, do you want to be the first person to try something, right? And so you ideally want to work with a partner who they've done something 5 times, they've got the support system there, and so building those, like you said, building those integrations with the core systems, getting the support put in place. It ain't sexy, but it's critical to making something can just be mission critical and relied on as a transaction system.
Yeah, completely with you. You don't want to be the very first. You don't want to be the last either. So it's like finding that right. Hey, can I go and approach a tech vendor, for example, that's been down this road? I'm still an early adopter. I'm still, not in the laggard zone, but also not the guinea pig. I think going with the maturity of the integration is also something that is worth considering.
One of the stories I love is there's a car company that I heard about where someone's like, buy their car, just don't buy the first 1,000 they make, right? Like let them build the first 1,000, buy the 1,000 at first, right? And in the tech world, one of the things we talk a lot about is I want to be one version behind on the software. So if there's like a new language, it's a version 4, I'll be at version 3.9 because that's the really rock solid one. And so like that they've done that, and so that's how I think about integrations and working with the vendor who's done a lot of them. It's like, hey, I want to be the 6th customer on that integration. That's a great place to be.
With you there. Last question before we wrap up. What would you say you are most excited about in 2025? Intentionally a broad question, but what's the first thing that pops into your mind as, wow, this is going to be huge this year, and I'm excited for it?
Man. The first thing that popped into my mind was because of the context of the call was just, and this is cliche, is Gen AI. But let me explain why. Like why the reason why I'm really excited about this is I can't in my career, there's been one other kind of like general purpose technology that just popped out of nowhere rather, and like given us the ability to recreate things. And that was the iPhone, right? When it came out, there's like, oh, you now have this completely new way of working with the world, right? And so people are like, oh, things that were previously chained to a desk, now you can do mobily, right? And like a whole bunch of new things happened and the world got reconfigured. I believe that as we start to spend more time figuring out what AIs can actually do, a lot of how we do freight is going to change in a way that is better for brokers, it's better for carriers, it's better for shippers, and that's really exciting. And I think it's not obvious exactly how it's going to do it, right? And you can kind of be like, there's the story of when the car was invented, everyone could see that we're going to need a lot more roads. We're going to need a lot more cars and steel and stuff like that. But nobody predicted Walmart, right? And like, what is the Walmart for freight that's going to come out of AI? And that's a really fun thing for all of us to kind of go work on and figure out what it means.
That is so wild. Your comment earlier about, hey, this is everybody's talking about AI in freight more so than in other industries where there are, maybe 10 different types of conversations that happen on the phone every single day over and over again, and there are maybe 40 different answers to those 10 questions. So that's pretty contained. So what can we do next with that information, and just make everything better and more efficient? I agree. That is extremely exciting. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining the conversation today.
Been a pleasure, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
As always, talk to you later. And let me just there we go. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining this week. We're live on YouTube and on x.com for the first time. So we're on LinkedIn here as well. Keep an eye out for some clips over the next week. And be sure to check out parade.ai to see the latest offerings. We've got some really cool stuff launching really soon. And so that should be really exciting. Can't wait to see you all soon next week.